Hello, today we are going to discuss about subnetting. So how to do the subnetting of the IP addresses. So in this we learn about what is subnetting and then the technique used in the subnetting like CIDR, classless interdomain routing and variable length subnet mask, and then we will discuss who manages IP addresses and why we need the subnetting and how to assign the IP addresses to the device in the network. So let's first discuss about what is subnetting. So subnetting is a process of dividing large network into the smaller network based on layer 3 IP address. This means the larger networks are divided into smaller networks by doing the subnetting of the IP addresses. That is network layer of an OSI model. So a subnet or a subnetwork is a logical subdivision of an IP network, and the practice of dividing a network into two or more networks is called subnetting. So subnetting of IP address is done by allocating host bits to the network bits, due to which a more networks are generated, and the subnetworks allow to add subnetworks without the need to acquire a new IP address from the ISPs. By doing subnetting, we can assign any number of IP addresses to the device in a particular network. So next we will discuss about the benefit of subnetting. So the benefit of subnetting that it reduces the network traffic by reducing the size of broadcast domain. As the networks are divided into smaller networks, so it creates a smaller broadcast domain, and due to which the network traffic also reduces. So it enables the user to access a work network from their homes, and subnetting helps in reducing the network complexity also, and it also increases the security options in the network. And by using subnetting, network addresses can be decentralized. It means that administrator control the network, who creates the network. It also control the network activities and also control the network traffic in the in subnetwork. So in next we will discuss about the classless interdomain routing. As previously, we are using the classful addressing method to design a network in the internet. In classful addressing, the defined range of subnetworks or the subnet marks are defined in the particular class according to the classes of the network. So but in this classless interdomain routing, it is a method for allocating IP addresses and routing in the network. In this, we are using the classless addressing. It means the subnet mask of each IP address is not defined in any class. So they are using the classless addressing. So CIDR is introduced in 1993 by Internet Engineering Task Force, and its goal was to reduce the rapid exhaustion of IPv4 addresses. So next is the IP. As the IP addresses consist of two group of bits, the most significant bits and the least significant bits. So the most significant bits are the network bits, or they are used to identify type of network or the subnetwork, whereas the least significant bits are the host bits, and they are used to specify how many devices or IPs are there in one subnetwork. So this division is used in CIDR to perform subnetting, and CIDR is based upon the variable length subnet mask VLSM technique. So let's first discuss about VLSM. Variable length subnet mask technique, which is used in CIDR. So VLSM is a process of dividing an IP address space into subnetwork of different sizes without wasting IP addresses. For example, the 192.168.1.160/30. This is the example of VLSM, as here /30 represents the classless addressing subnet mask. This address is not defined in any class, so this is a classless addressing example of classless addressing. And VLSM is closely related to CIDR, and VLSM allows various network or subnetwork to have different subnet masks. So here CIDRs providing the routing information to reduce the routing information to the router and by grouping the various subnets, and whereas VLSM helps how to optimize the available address space, or how to route the or how to use the available IP address spaces. The next is who manages IP addresses. So the Internet Assigned Number Authority INA, which it manages the IP addresses. And for managing these IP addresses, it forms a 5 regional internet registries which allocate the IP address blocks to the particular ISPs in their region, such as BSNL, Airtel, Vodafone, etc. So the 5 regional internet registries are RIPE and CE, Resorts IP Europeans Network Coordination Center that manages the IP addresses in particular area of Europe. Next is APNIC, that is Asia Pacific Network Information Center, which manages the IP addresses in the part of Asia, Australia, New Zealand and the other neighboring countries. Whereas the next RIR is AFRINIC, which is African Network Information Center, and it control the IP addresses in Africa. And next is ARIN, American Registry for Internet Number, and it manages the IP addresses in North America, like in US, Canada and server region of Antarctica. And LACNIC, Latin American Network Information Center, it manages the IP addresses in Latin America, like and the part of Caribbean region. So these are the 5 RARs which manages the IP addresses in particular region of the world. So next is how to assign the IP address to a particular device. If a device is new to the network and wants to communicate in the network, so it must have an IP address. So how that device gets the IP address? So if a device wants to connect to internet, then that device requests the ISP for the IP address. So first of all, it request goes to the ISP. As ISP gets the range of IP addresses from regional internet registries according to the location of device. So where RIR gets defined IP range from Internet Assigned Numbers Authority. So as a device request to first goes to the ISP, which pass the request to the particular RIR, and RIR forwards request to the INA. In this way, the request flows in the network. So in this way, device gets an IP address from the range of the IP addresses. Next is why we need subnetting. So why this subnetting, we need the subnetting in the network. So let's take an example. If any ISP wants to create a new network, so install a new network, so let's assume that it requires 120 IP addresses in total to install a new network. So the ISP requests to APNIC for IP addresses. Let's assume that networks is designed in the APNIC region or the Asia region. So it must request to the APNIC for the IP addresses. APNIC provide a IP address that is 193.172.16.0/24 to the ISP. So as this is the class C address, and we know that the class C address have 254 valid IP address in total. So the network the new network which we have to install require only 120 IP addresses, but APNIC provide us 154 IP address in total. But due to which the wastage of 134 IP addresses is done here in the network. So to stop the wastage, as these IP addresses are very costly, and to stop the wastage of these IP addresses, we introduced a method known as subnetting. And as we we're using class C address, as class C address have 256 IP address in total. So to the subnetting of this class, we will divide this IP address into 2 subnetwork. Then each subnetwork have must 128 IP address in total. And if we want to make 4 subnetwork, then each subnet will have 64 IP address in total. So this is known as subnetting. Here we divide the particular IP address into 2 or 4, or according to our need, we also divide into more networks. The next is how we assign the IP address to the device in the network. So it can be assigned in two ways. First is static IP address and next is dynamic IP address. So let's discuss about static IP address and dynamic IP addresses. So static IP address is an IP address that are manually configured for a device. That is, a person enters the value of IP address to the device. Whereas the dynamic IP address is an IP address that is automatically assigned to each device in a network, or the assignment of IP addresses is done by a DHCP server. A client requests to the DHCP for the IP address, then DHCP gives the IP address to the particular device. So a static IP address is called static because it doesn't change, and dynamic IP address is called dynamic because it will change on future connection to the network. So it means the static IP address are the fixed IP address or dedicated IP address, whereas the dynamic IP address are the temporary IP addresses. So this is all about subnetting. Thank you.